Oops.
I have to text it.
Okay.
So, can we put OEM on for Monday also?
Sure.
Department review? Sure.
You mean the budget as well as the legislation?
Do we need departmental review if we have the legislation? Is there more in the departmental review?
I'm not sure.
Is there more in the departmental review for OEM than is in the legislation?
There's the money.
No, not to take all the legislation together, it makes MK civil service. And then pension plan will allow someone who is a police or firefighter in the plan, who is promoted, to stay in the plan.
Okay,
Other than that, it's still one with fire, use it to its own department.
okay, so
Makes
can,
cabinet an 8.0, like the other department directors.
how do we get, and this is another issue, but are we trying to give parity to fire chief?
Yeah, remember I said this morning that we corrected the F-18 and
Yeah.
PCL.
So is that done within the documents we already have?
It's done in the PCL document.
Okay, okay.
think
So
we
if we
need-
don't need the department review and this.
Right.
Okay.
So we really should be reconvening to discuss these things. So Finance Committee is reconvened. So
So, Mr. Chair, I would like to make sure we have OEM legislation and any legislation related to Office of Emergency Preparedness on Monday's agenda.
yes, I think by taking up all the legislation, that happens.
Okay.
Unless there's something I'm not understanding. So,
Okay.
can we do a wrap on city council and mayor? We have a request in for legislation, draft legislation, to deal with the city clerk. We had discussion of the economic policy analysis, the economic development manager, and the small business and minority enterprise liaison. I don't think we have come to a resolution on that. I would certainly entertain a motion to do one thing or another, and then we can have discussion. And then we went through all of the dollars. We went through the enhancements. If there's any motion other than a motion to recommend approval as amended, I would certainly entertain discussion on that. So I would direct us now to where we left off on the economic policy analysis and the economic development.
Well, Mr. Chair, part of our discussion was about the role of the economic policy analyst and whether analyst is a correct term, and we talked about changing the name.
Which-
And I think Ms. Smith told us that she can change that without us doing anything.
Right.
I still feel strongly that small minority businesses liaison should be in the mayor's office.
As do I. But I also think there should be part of that also taken up in planning. So I have no problem at all with having this be a new FD or a position in the mayor's staffing, and certainly would entertain a motion to that effect. And I think that person, in my understanding of it, would work hand in glove with the economic policy analyst in terms of outreach to the business community.
So I will move favorable recommendation for the small minority business liaison being in the mayor's office.
May I ask a question? Is that appropriate or inappropriate?
Of course.
You would have the small minority business liaison report to the chief of staff, not to the economic development manager, that position has always reported to?
I'm having a hard time hearing
You would have the small and minority business liaison position report to the chief of staff in the mayor's office instead of to the economic development manager that position has always reported to?
That's the
that?
That is the thrust of the motion, yes.
Okay.
Well, no, I was hoping that we would get back to that as a separate
Yeah. I agree.
decision. So,
Do you want to take them in
Maybe
the
we
reverse
should not
order so
take
that
it in
you
this
know
order.
where one is
Yeah.
before you make a decision on the other?
Right.
Mr. Chair, if you feel strongly that there should be two positions, one in the mayor's office and one in one in P and Z, I would support that, but I want to know how it's going to work.
Well, so my argument would be, we can take that up when we get to planning and zoning.
Well, but as the city manager just said, we need somebody to whom the small minority business person
Well, if you,
answers to.
if you put the small minority business liaison in the mayor's office and you don't put the economic development manager position in the mayor's office, the small and minority business liaison will report to the chief of staff, not to
Right.
the economic development manager that the position has always reported to.
Right. And,
Well-
and just like the economic policy analyst reports to the chief of staff.
Well,
Yes.
The economic policy analyst
Yes, everyone in the mayor's office
reports to the chief of staff.
indirectly reports to the chief of staff. I mean, the
Right.
chief of staff manages the mayor's staff. They are appointed by the mayor.
Right.
But she coordinates all of their work.
And that's consistent with the other changes we're making, where we're making the city manager's office separate. So when you look at this chart here, you've got the mayor and council, you've got the council members, you've got the mayor, you've got the chief of staff. Everything else falls under the chief of staff. Is that not correct?
according to
The
this,
city attorney doesn't fall under the chief of staff.
I didn't think the city attorney was here anymore.
Well, the city attorney's in the mayor's office. The office of law is in the mayor's
But
office.
it's its own office, just like,
What page are you looking at?
I'm just looking at page 43. So we're making a separate, we're creating the office of law.
Yes, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So whatever we do with the economic development manager, we can still vote on your motion, which is to have a small and minority business liaison in the office of the mayor, reporting to the chief of staff.
except in the past, we have had this position report to the mayor, not the chief of staff, because we didn't have a chief of staff.
Right.
Okay. Just like the environmental policy advisor, just like I assume the economic development manager would really be answering to the mayor as advisors to the mayor. That was our,
The chief of staff coordinates all of the work within the mayor's office.
Right.
But they are appointed by, and the mayor is the direct supervisor.
Right.
But she,
Okay,
Gavin says to her,
okay. We've added new positions and new responsibilities. There's one thing to be addressing oversight of staff and something else to be addressing policy. And I thought that we were putting people in the mayor's office that are more policy-driven. And I see
we
that
are.
as small and minority business as a policy position also.
As do I.
Okay, so as long as that's clear that it's a
Right.
policy position like the others that we're moving, I'm good.
Right. So the motion, as I understand it, is for the Finance Committee to recommend to the council this change that puts small and minority business liaison into the staffing for the office of the mayor. Is there a second? I will second that.
Thank you.
Is there discussion? I would hope you will tell us why you shook your head no.
I simply don't think it's a good idea to have that position subject to the almost automatically furthering this mayor or any other mayor's agenda as opposed to doing, the work a lot more independently. I don't see any reason to change it.
So let me just respond to that. These are the people that are carrying out the mayor's agenda, just like these staff have carried out every previous mayor's agenda. The mayor, I think we've always had the mayor have the right to have a set of staff that directly report to him or her to carry out the mayor's policy objectives. And in fact, in the past, this position, more often than not, had been in the mayor's office.
That's not my recollection, certainly not in the recent past, and I see no reason to change it. Nobody's made the
Okay.
case as far as I'm concerned.
All right, I accept that. Is there other discussion? Hearing no further discussion, I call the question. All those in favor of recommending approval of the movement of the small and minority business liaison from planning and zoning to the office of the mayor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No?
No. All right. We moved something, even if it wasn't unanimous. All right. The next topic, though, is what do we do with the economic development manager? You've heard my arguments. You've heard arguments from colleagues. Is there a motion regarding moving the economic development manager to the office of the mayor?
Well, I'll speak to it. I will move that we move the economic development manager to the office of the mayor. I think that we need to elevate our economic development opportunities. Earlier, before the break, I talked about the various renditions of this we've had over the years. We still haven't gotten it right, but where it is now isn't getting the type of attention that all of us have talked about. So maybe, hopefully, with more direct attention from the mayor, more direct guidance from the mayor, our economic development will continue to get, is better enhanced.
So, before we go further, is there a second to the motion?
Perhaps, but not from me.
I will second it so that we can have discussion.
Okay, thank you. I don't want it to be buried in the planning and zoning department. You know, planning and zoning, and not that they cannot be an advisor, just like all of these other positions, but planning and zoning has a litany of other responsibilities also. And this is just, one other seat that, in my mind, isn't getting the attention that it needs to, or the elevation to the level of success that we need.
Okay? Comments, Alderman Payne?
Ditto what I said before.
All right. My comment is, I'd like to see, I think we already have a person in the person of economic policy analyst that has elevated that whole fostering business in the office of the mayor. I see special emphasis on small and minority business liaison as just that, special emphasis, but is part and parcel with what was described to us by Susie, the job of the economic policy analyst. I did hear her plea, her case, that the mayor needs more help. I'd like to see, at least for a year, whether giving the small and minority business person working hand in glove with the economic policy analyst, or whatever the new name will be, see how that works out. But I do not support moving this position from planning and zoning. I'd like to see that, and I'd like to see backfilling another position in planning and zoning to fill this vacancy left by moving the small and minority business liaison, because I think it also needs to be emphasized in the planning function, particularly the comprehensive plan. So I'm supporting that emphasis in both places for that, but not, the economic development is a planning function, a land use function, and we really are going to need those resources when we're doing the comp plan in planning and zoning.
Well, I think there's a difference, and I'm going to be hopefully sensitive to this, but the economic development manager is a certified position. I almost said certifiable, but that may be the case too.
That's us.
Yeah, that's for the rest of us.
Right. I assume, and correct me, Trish, if, Ms. Hopkins, if I'm wrong, but that requires certain certifications to be the economic development manager. So there's no training that they have.
Hope has stepped up to take over that responsibility. But she does not want to be upset. She does not want to be politicized.
Is your mic on?
I think Teresa has it here.
Because I believe that the manager has a higher level of skill set than the economic
SMBE
policy
liaison.
analyst, that position that we currently have. So we're talking two different, I mean, while they're on the same topic,
Oh,
one has
you're comparing it to the contractual position?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely, it's a higher order position. Yeah.
so they're not comparable,
No,
and one is a trained professional.
sorry.
I mean, that's our management position.
Yeah, we don't have any special certifications, but the minimum requirements for the economic development manager is a bachelor's degree in business, planning, real estate, or related field, and 5 years of considerable related experience in commercial and industrial real estate development and business financing. So you're really looking for somebody that's worked in the field, who understands what it takes to generate and finance and support business development.
So I think that's a different type of position.
Right, and then, I'm sorry to
Go ahead,
to
no.
speak over you, but the knowledge, skills, and abilities then get into specifically what you need as your knowledge base, and also what kind of skill sets you're going to need for carrying out these duties. So then we're talking about understanding the principles, practices of planning, formulating, analyzing, and implementing economic development programs and activities. Thorough knowledge of funding sources, their interests and limitations, real property resources and values. Thorough knowledge of the location and other requirements of business firms operating in the city, as well as possible expansion needs. Considerable knowledge of marketing, media, and other avenues of recruiting business firms. Ability to represent the city effectively in person. So it's really very specific in that descriptive element of the job description, so that when somebody's applying, that's how we announce positions. We tell them all of that. And so when we're screening potential candidates, we're also stating and restating what the expectations of the job are through that process.
So are you following that this is, this management position, manager position?
Right. This is a grade 17. This is not anywhere near what the contractual position
This is
was
the position
intended
that
to-
Hollis had.
Right,
to perform.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't, from my background, from my HR perspective, see them as anywhere near equivalent.
Right.
Or overstepping one another.
So I'm not sure why we wouldn't want that high level of skill set advising the mayor. And as a compromise, I would support the creation of another position in the planning department. I don't agree that we need to backfill the small minority business position there.
Right.
But to backfill a deficit that we're creating there by taking staff people out of their department. because I would hate for us to develop another position there to kind of overlap with the position that we've just put in the, recommended for the mayor's office.
Well, I thank you for offering a compromise. We can certainly discuss that when we get to the planning department, planning and zoning department. I don't know when we're scheduled to do it, but this is removing 2 economic development resources from planning and zoning and moving them into the mayor's office, and that I don't support. And I think that we have these 2 positions in planning and zoning now. We were just starting to build back the momentum that we lost when we eliminated AEDC, and I think that these are very important planning functions, and I think that's where they belong. I heard this chief of staff describing very different purposes for the people in the mayor's office, which is much more of a business community outreach function. If the mayor, just like any of the rest of us, need to understand land use, planning, and development, the mayor, more easily than we, can go over to the Department of Planning and Zoning and get that expertise.
Okay, well, I would ask, since we're going to put this off clearly, that we get the documentation to support all the things that have been done in economic development
Right.
in the planning department.
Yes, I agree, we should get that. In the meantime, we have a duly seconded motion on whether or not to move the economic manager position from planning and zoning to the mayor's office. And if there's no further question, I would call the question. No further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying no. No. So the Finance Committee will not make that recommendation.
I do have another recommendation I'd like to
All right.
make, however.
Thank
And Ms. Sutherland, maybe you can tell me whether I don't need to do this, but it's to move the special events coordinator to civil service. All we need to do is take it to the board, or what?
So to do that, Tricia would have to take it to the Civil Service Review Board for their recommendation, and we would have
First.
to amend the resolution that does the pay plan and classifications, and we'd have to amend the bill that has the exempt positions in it. So some of the legislation before you would require amendments.
First? Does it have to go to the board first?
No, it all just has to take effect on July 1st.
So
You could recommend that. We
Right.
could prepare budget amendments to make it happen. She's preparing to take it to civil service.
Okay,
Right.
If
So
they
that's
said no, what happens? Can they still do it?
then we just withdraw
Then
it.
you don't have their recommendation.
Right.
You don't have their recommendation, but is their do they have to have their recommendation to do it? What if the Civil Service Board says no, can they say yes?
That's highly unusual. I don't, let me research.
We'll find out, but
But I
we can
make-
still make the
I can
motion.
make a motion now that we move the special events specialist from exempt to civil service.
Is there a second? I second it.
Thank you.
Is there discussion? I favor this. I agree with you that this function should carry on irrespective of the administration. It's been a godsend. The individual in the job now has been fabulous. But I guess I would entertain some discussion about why you wouldn't favor that.
I think it's fine the way it is. Nobody's made a compelling argument to me to change my mind. I just don't think it needs to be moved.
All right, I accept that.
Mr. Chair, this is the second year this recommendation has been before us, so it isn't just a great idea that just came along.
All right. But Alderman Peon is
It was in
certainly-
last year's budget that we moved it from contractual to exempt service.
Right.
Okay. Last year's budget.
Ellie, did you have any comment?
No, I just wanted that clarification that that was what we did last year, which was well-deserved.
So we have a motion from the Finance Committee to recommend to the council moving the special events specialist, the development event specialist from exempt status to civil service. We've had varying opinions. I would call the vote. All those in favor of that recommendation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No?
All right. Is there any other business we need to take up with the city council mayor portion? Any comments? I think we've made, some of us at least, supportive comments about the enhancements. Do we want to make a recommendation on the enhancements?
You're talking about as a whole?
Yes. Or however you want to do it, but
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we give a favorable recommendation of the mayor's proposed staffing changes as amended.
I was talking about the enhancements.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're talking about the
Right.
enhancement. Oh, I'll move the enhancements also, with the caveat that we would like for them to go back to the organizations that cross over to have discussions about how they can work together. That would be with Arts and Public Places, Recs and Parks, Community Action Agency, and Police.
Let's finish the motion.
Oh,
I'll get
yeah,
you.
no, that's fine.
Would you be willing to add to your motion that we get regular reports
Yes.
on these activities? So
Yes.
it's,
Quarterly report.
all right. So that's a motion. Is there a second? Come on, Fred. I'll
Well,
sec-
I plan on voting for it today, but I may not vote for it at the
Okay.
time the budget comes up.
All right. So is that a second?
No?
No. All right, I'll second the motion. So the motion, before I get to you, Alderman Tierney, is that we recommend favorably to the council for these enhancements with a request that we get a quarterly report on the activities and,
That they seek to work in partnership with agencies that do the same types of activities.
right. And I think they said they are, but, so it's been moved and seconded. Alderwoman Tierney.
Well, to that point, during recess, we received an email from AIPPC, and there seems to be a major disagreement that
I
we
reviewed
need to
that.
reconcile.
Just got it during lunch.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
We got a text or an email from the
Genevieve?
chairperson of the
Yeah.
AIPPIC,
CC.
Yeah. So-
saying that they'd be happy to work with One Annapolis and
But they
would
haven't
look forward to
been
doing that.
consulted.
Right, they have some issues.
All right.
So it's to Sheila's, to Alderwoman Finlayson's point, that they just need to go back and coordinate, and so everyone's
Right.
happy.
Yeah. So that is part of, that would be consistent with what? All right. So we have the motion to recommend support for the enhancements, asking that the group redouble their efforts to coordinate with other bodies and that we get quarterly reports on the activities. Is there further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. We do have, this is the Finance Committee, we do have dollar amounts, 3 tables of budget summary. Is there a motion to recommend support of these dollars as recommended in the mayor's budget?
Mr. Chair, you want a motion to approve the 47-2? Is that what you're asking?
Of all three of, I was
What page are you
hoping,
on? Where is
page
it?
44 and 45,
Got it, okay,
Oh,
it's
the
right there.
complete budget summary?
yes.
I'll move a favorable recommendation for the complete budget summary.
Is there a second? I'll second. Is there discussion?
Ask Kelly who that email
Are
came
you, so you're taking a motion to approve the amounts shown on page 44 and 45 for council and mayor?
Yes.
You understand that includes the reclassification of the Director of the Office of Environmental Policy. You understand that those numbers include the Economic Development Manager.
We understand that. We also understand that those may get changed when it goes to the council writ large for votes.
Okay, I just want to make sure
Mhm.
I understood what you were doing, because
But-
it's...
Yes. So, any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nope.
All right. Do we need to do a motion to recommend favorably to the council with the changes that we've made?
Are you talking about just the mayor's?
Yeah, this whole section that we've been working on.
Okay.
Well, we could do the whole
Because-
budget.
Well, no, but did we do the law department? Are we not doing the law department separately? We are.
Yeah, law's separate. Law's
Okay,
next.
so we're just talking the mayor's office.
Right,
City council and mayor, okay.
right.
I'll move whatever that is.
Recommending favorably, in the Finance Committee report, recommending favorably with some amendments.
Yes.
Is there a second? No. I can't wait for you to,
Don't say it, don't say it.
For my 84 amendments on the night we vote on the budget?
yes, your new name is Julie.
That will take all at one time.
And I second it. Is there discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oh,
No, wait a minute. Wrong vote, mistake.
confusing me.
I wrote no.
All those opposed? No. All right, so, are we ready to move on to well, where are we on time? We need,
45 minutes.
okay,
I have a 2 o'clock meeting. If you want to talk
Yeah,
about the
right.
city manager's budget, can we do it right away?
the city manager's budget?
Yes.
Yes, but before we do that, so we're going to skip law and go to the city manager. Yes, we can do that.
Thank you.
But I think we need to talk about amending our Finance Committee agenda for Monday and then have a vote on that. And,
Do I have to second?
well, we're doing it, while we have all 3 members of the Finance Committee together, I would like us to take up the charter amendments, the ordinances, and probably the resolutions as well, although that might not be as critical. But the discussion of the reorganizations and the appropriations and everything, I think we should try to have while we're all 3 together. So I would entertain a motion that we amend the Finance Committee's agenda for Monday to take up the legislation.
Second.
And I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, so moved.
All right,
It's not necessary,
so,
but that's okay.
It was seconded before I moved, but
yeah,
I guess.
right, all right.
We don't really need to make a
need to-
motion, it's our agenda.
Well, but we have to publish it.
Yeah.
We has.
Oh, we haven't published it, all right. All right, well, so, good, we took care of that. Now let's
Okay.
move to the office of city manager. So, are you going to make some introductory comments, city manager?
There's nothing new in the city manager's budget except an assistant city manager, grade A14, at a cost of $117,500.
Yay! Is there anything that council would like to discuss? I mean, not council, committee. I guess one thing that, and I assume that we're breaking new ground, and for next year's budget, we'll get there, but it would really be good to have the goals, objectives, and performance measures for everybody. There isn't one here.
My goals and objectives are my department's goals and objectives.
Okay, well, that still could be stated, so, all right, so is there anything that we need to? This, of course, is showing the movement again of the Office of Environmental Policy, Environmental Coordinator, and Environmental Forester. We are going to have opportunities to talk about those when we get elsewhere in the budget. So if we're going to make a motion to recommend approval, I would ask that we make that note that some of these things we might be coming back for consideration.
Okay, I'll make the motion that we give a favorable recommendation to the budget of the Office of the City Manager.
Is there a
And I do
second?
have one question.
Well, so we are not speaking to the environmental policy positions at this point? I mean, by voting for this, I'm not necessarily approving that part. Is that correct?
That would be my sense. That's why I offered that reservation.
The only thing, I'm sorry.
And that's in the mayor's budget that
That's
you
in the
just
mayor's
acted on,
budget.
not in the city manager's.
The city manager has the 2 employees and some supplies.
Right.
That's it.
I'm just looking at it based on what's on the sheet in front of us. We just approved one piece of the
Oh, right, so you're
mayor's
right. So
budget.
last year,
Right.
Office of Environmental Policy reported to the city manager.
Right.
Next year, we have
Right,
the
got that.
director position converted to environmental policy advisor in the mayor's office.
Right.
The forester position falls under planning and zoning, which administers titles 17 and 21 related to trees. And the position that Racine Hodo currently has, environmental programs coordinator, becomes strictly, and what is primarily her job now, but it becomes strictly a stormwater management position, fully funded in the Watershed Restoration Fund, because all of her duties relate to MS4 compliance, illicit discharge, TMDL, et cetera.
We got it.
Okay.
All right. The other thing that I would say before we complete this is, I still would like to go back at some point, probably not for this year's budget, to discuss a deputy city manager, but I fully recognize the need for an assistant city manager.
Yes, that's next step.
Right.
I think that's a distinct possibility, but again, we vote on that specific issue, I think, in another part of the budget. Is that, or are we
No,
voting on it today?
there's no proposal for a deputy. This is an assistant city
Yeah.
manager.
Yes.
Deputy city manager would be an alter ego to the city manager, someone who would be fully empowered to attend the endless
All right,
meetings.
but am I voting supporting an assistant city manager by
Yes.
voting for this today?
Yes, you are.
I pretty much
Okay.
support that.
Yeah.
I do have a question about it, though.
So we have a motion and a second, right?
All right, we had discussion.
Yeah. Did we get a
Why
second?
is,
Fred, do you second the motion to support this?
not at this point.
All right.
I've got a
I will
question.
second it so we can
Okay.
discuss it.
All right, I'd ask the city finance director, why is an A14, as described in the note below the box on page 51, why is that $117,500? I understand that that includes benefits, but it looks to me like the starting salary for an A14 is roughly $64,000. I don't think we're giving that person $52,000 worth of benefits.
We picked a midpoint in the scale, not the bottom of the scale. I think it's going to be difficult to get somebody for $64,000 to do the kind of work that position's going to need to do. So we
So it's
put, it's
80.
about 90,000 for salary and an estimate of 27,000 for the benefits. And that, the benefits is just an estimate too, because you don't know what medical plan they're going to choose, et cetera, so.
Well, 90,000 is,
I think that makes sense. We want to get the best we can get. Lord knows the city manager needs the help.
Yes.
She's not the only person in the city that needs the help, but she does need that help.
that's step 8 out of 11 that I'm looking at. It seems, well, be that as it may. I agree, as much as frustrated as I've gotten at times with the city manager at times, I do think that
Notice you
it's,
say that when she's out of the room.
no, she left the room before she could hear my comments.
Okay.
I do think that it's a needed position, and I certainly would support it.
Right. So we have a motion, it's been seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of recommending favorably in our report to the council, the budget and staffing for the Office of City Manager, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Now, the long-awaited Office of Law. Sorry, Ashley. You know us.
You may get the both of them.
For all of those. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay, I hope this is another fairly straightforward discussion. We have the description of the office, we have the staffing, and we have the dollars. There's an enhancement for $3,500, so, for $35,000.
Yeah,
I'm an economist, zeros don't count.
3,500
That's
wouldn't
why I
get us
went into
very far.
economics instead of accounting.
Yeah, no,
Right,
not
right.
much.
So are there some general comments you'd like to share with us?
I mean, I'm just sort of tag teaming in on this week. We appreciate any money you want to throw us our way. We have had a recent increase in a need for outside counsel, both for specialized things and just because we're such a small office that it's hard to eliminate conflicts. I mean,
Right.
generally, once one attorney in the office knows, we're all sort of tainted, so, and for whatever reason, we have seen an increase in that in the last couple of years, so outside counsel help is always appreciated. And anything else, I know our work management system, which is listed here, I believe is being funded through IT. But when you consider their budget, that would be appreciated. Try and bring our office into the 21st century. Like I said, I think we operate on a fairly streamlined budget to do the best we can. So anything you want to throw our way would be.
I do want to speak to the point you raised about conflicts. It is surprising, particularly if we have somebody out, because the Office of Law has to represent the department component and represent sometimes other components, and it's amazing how quickly we can run out of staff when we're trying to deal with these things. So I think this is a minimum. I alone cost us more than that amount of money one year, so.
Yeah, and keep in mind, outside counsel does not charge the same hourly rates that ours break down, if you do the math. They're even on a government rate, they are substantially higher than us. We saw that when I went out on maternity leave last time and we had to hire some people in. Those costs can run up really quickly.
Right.
I'm hoping we won't have to do that for my second maternity leave. I'm hoping we'll get all that. But outside attorneys are always needed and expensive, even if we negotiate them down as best we can.
Right. This shows the city clerk being moved out of the Office of Law. I think we're going to be asking for legislation to move it back in. I have no idea how that's going to turn out, but
and that would obviously require a sort of a budget adjustment depending on
But it should be budget neutral. It's same dollars.
Yeah, it's budget neutral. You would just be positioning what department has those funds.
Any other discussion or comments? I have one, but
No, I, if I might, Mr. Chair, I agree with you. I think it's maybe not on a shoestring budget, but I think it's a very fair amount overall, and I don't seek to micromanage the department, and they should be able to spend their money as they feel they need to. They know a lot better than we do, and there are a couple of experienced people down there that I think keep a pretty good eye on the budget.
the, under the performance measures, and you might not have this in front of you, but on page 48, number 10, I wonder if we shouldn't be considering some dollars for training of our boards and commissions. I don't know how that's handled now in your budget, but
It's probably not really budgeted for. I know, as needed, Gary or I train those that we handle as requested, but it's sort of haphazarded and as requested at this point.
So we can discuss that amongst ourselves, but I think we've entrusted a huge amount of the power of the council, the land use power, to these boards and commissions, and they are oftentimes short in the number of members they have. We are filling them with new people. The issues they deal with, I'll just take port wardens, which is not often thought of, or the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board, are being faced more and more with very contentious issues. More and more of the community are becoming legalistic, if not attorney. Certainly, you could think of some names who are getting into legal field, so I wonder if we shouldn't be talking about some kind of a budget supplement there. Ashley, the other thing I didn't see in here, which I would argue is, and I might not have understood it, number 14, which takes a considerable amount of time, which is all of the efforts, there is no, but
Yeah,
MPIAs.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
That's
I
a biggie.
handle all of those in coordinating
Yeah.
for the city, and I would say I started doing it at my former employment, and I've seen in the last 5 or 6 years that the number and the amount of information that's being requested has substantially increased. And everybody wants a fee waiver, which we do try to, where it's warranted, waive them. But the last month, I got 40 plus PIA requests in 1 month.
Yeah.
And that doesn't include your basic run-of-the-mill requests that like the police department and the fire department and planning and zoning can all handle on their own. These are like they come to me when they're more complex. So yeah, we've often gotten, I have 4 requests right now for email searches that are totaling about 8,000 to 10,000 emails for me to review. So it has become and it's not just us. I follow the legislation and everything up statewide, and it's become a problem because you're trying to balance what the original intent was, which was to allow like the normal citizen access, and it's turned into you have companies that are searching for data to resell. You are turning into sort of a research library for various people who have their own platforms or causes for, and not that we don't like helping everyone, but it has become a huge demand that frankly is overwhelming at times. Now we do have months where we only get like 10 or 15, and those are nice months, but it's substantial, and it's not my full-time job, but I'm the only person in the office who can handle it right now. And the laws are constantly changing on it so that you have to respond faster and faster, and you have to include more details in your response. So yeah, it's a problem. It's similar to the Open Meetings Act, the Public Information Act.
That was my number 15.
Yeah, are both becoming not harder to comply with, but they require more and more in order to meet compliance. And you have to have more training. When I started doing these like 6 or 7 years ago, they weren't that hard to handle. And they've become significantly harder to handle. Even things like, and not to bring up HOPPA as an issue, but body-worn camera footage. All right, so everybody wants to request those, but under state law, you have very specific things that you have to redact out of the videos before you release. And we don't have the capability to do that, which means you have to send it out, and we have to incur costs. So it's one of those things that I don't think anyone envisioned when the original act went into place, but there's a lot of people who use it in ways that were not meant with the original intent of the act, but you still have to respond.
So how do we address it? 40 a month is...
Well, that's a peak number. Usually I would say we get about 20-ish.
Well,
I do.
But that's one a day for your 20 days of the month of days that you work.
Yeah, because they can submit them on the weekends, so.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
but
and
you
it
know what?
spills over to
You
IT.
only work a 40-hour work week or a
Yeah.
38-hour work week, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So is there a way that we can get a handle on this? Or is it going to need additional staff? And are we passing the cost on?
We are, well, I helped work on new legislation that is before you guys now to try and implement the Model Public Information Act suggested by the state, which was also implement fees. And we're trying to reasonably match the fees to what's being requested. But I think the fees, we're not trying to be a deterrent, but it makes people, I guess, not submit frivolous. Like, if the information is already publicly available through like Track It or the police department's website or someone, we would like people to do that versus submitting the request to us. I think that's a good first start. As to whether we need another staff, I don't know if we need it yet, but I could foresee a future where you would need sort of a position that maybe does that plus some other stuff.
So as I said, a lot of this doesn't just affect you, it affects IT, because we have searches of all the emails.
Yeah,
So-
it sort of goes out because I'm sort of like the funnel, but I send out the request to each department and they're the ones who have to gather their records, which can be anything from really simple things to having to do huge data dumps into worksheets.
So I would like to ask if you would consider adding a 14, which is MPIA, and a 15, which is Open Meetings Act, because I think they're very important functions that I didn't find elsewhere in here. They may be hidden, but that's just part one. And as you know, I'd also like to talk about training for item 10, but putting them in as part of the performance for the department is one thing. Are there budgetary, is there a systematic way that we can deal with MPIA or?
There are companies out there that are starting to toy around with different software to help handle it. I haven't really researched that yet, so that would be an alternative to a staff.
So maybe that's for next year's budget.
Yeah, I'd have to look into it. I'm hoping the work management system that we are going to implement will help with standardized responses that we can more easily send out. Because that is honestly what time consuming, because you have to do a 10-day letter, and then you have to do the actual response, you have to do denial letters. So if you could get that sort of handled, it would help.
Okay. So maybe we can talk to Barbara about that too when she comes in.
Yeah, and I don't know how good that software is. I know the police departments looked at it because they get a very high volume of these, and planning and zoning may or may not have looked at it because they also get an extremely high volume.
But they all get funneled through you, right?
If they can handle them, if there's nothing that needs to be redacted or reviewed, or there's nothing questionable, most of those departments are very well trained in how to handle like routine requests. But we get more and more not routine requests, and then a lot of the smaller departments just simply don't have any staff to reserve to handling all the logistics of it. They'll help me find the records, but so it's sort of a it's a new area that in the last 5 years has changed drastically.
I have another question. I'm looking at the contractual services line item in the budget.
Is that the one related to my maternity leave?
I don't know, is it? I assume that this is where, when we contract out for additional legal services, but maybe this is not.
You're looking at contractual services.
There's nothing in there.
Yeah, there
How
is,
can there be?
right
Are you
here,
on page 52?
budget summary, contractual
So I've
services, 47.
gotten to the wrong place.
Yeah, 47 in contractual services. When I talked with Karen Steele, she said that includes legal services as well as telephone and postage costs.
Well, under enhancements, it speaks to legal services for boards and commissions. But what about for litigation, when we have to get outside counsel? Is that somewhere else in the budget?
Not per se. I think it's sort of, at least from what I can tell over the last 5 years, it's sort of been as needed, and we sort of ask for supplemental.
Take it out of the contingency fund?
Yeah, we take it out, continue, or if we don't have someone filled in, like the city attorney position, I believe sometimes we've used that. But I don't think there's been a dedicated line item per se that covers all of our outside legal counsel needs.
I can comment that the line item that relates to legal services totals $85,000. The 35 is additional monies.
Right.
And
So-
there's also
Just sounds low.
$35,000 for legal charges and services, but I think those are other items, not necessarily
Yeah.
outside legal counsel.
So one of the things that I've done, colleagues, is I've kind of looked at the levels, the audited levels from 2018, because that's what we really spent. The auditors have certified that. And I've kind of looked at 2018 going to 2020 and skipped over 19 because that seems to be a moving target. But when you look at what we have for contract services and spent for contract services in 2018, it was $125,000. We tried to whittle that down in 19. We weren't successful because we were already adjusting it up, and I don't know where we are in terms of the projections, but
Projections will be higher than
Right.
we have moved some monies from the salaries down into the legal services to help cover some of these funds.
so my sense, and I think this was your comment, also Alderman Payone, is that we're doing bare minimums. I don't know what I would change these numbers to, but a number more like 18, which is what we really spent. And I don't think, was that an aberrant year? 18?
I don't think so. I think, generally speaking, we always have a fairly significant need for outside counsel. Like I said, between trying to cover all the boards and commissions, which there's been an increased need over the last 4 or 5 years to have outside counsel just because conflicts prevent our office from representing everyone. And then I would say that there's been a general increase in like more complex litigation that has required outside assistance. Not to mention that like things like union negotiations also usually require outside assistance. But I unfortunately don't think the trend is for a decrease, despite the fact that we have increased our staffing over the last couple of years. We're still sort of churning along and still need outside counsel assistance.
So what is the sense, I mean, clearly we can move forward to a recommendation from the Finance Committee to recommend approval of this as it stands, but is there a sense that we might want to consider a supplement to the contract services line to bring it up, say, to the 2018 level? Or leave well enough alone, wait to see what happens?
I was going to recommend it as written and wait to see what happens.
I will add some more information. The original budget for this line item was $42,400 about, and we have, like I said, we have used some appropriations from other sources, and it's now at what I see as $78,800. But we're spending, right now, we're spending in line with that.
Okay.
But I don't know what is going to happen when we need to get contract services when she's out.
So that's a known that Ashley will be out. Are we covered?
They have some money in here to cover that short-term
Okay.
absence.
And it looks like last year was an anomaly, 44,000 or 18, whatever that was.
80.
It's too low, though.
Yeah, I would say it was probably too low. We ended up doing a lot of, because I do most of the contracts to hire the outside counsel, we ended up doing a lot of last-minute amendments to push the dollar amounts up just because we needed more services than was
I can
originally
definitely say
budgeted.
that was true in labor negotiations.
Yeah, labor negotiations,
Yeah.
I know we did several amendments. I know the police trial boards is running fairly expensive as well. And I don't think those are necessarily going to slow down anytime soon. Yeah.
We have 4-year agreements, so the labor negotiations
That'll
won't
take a
come up.
breather, but, yeah, we're seeing a lot more, and I don't handle it personally, but I can see we're handling a lot more complex issues and a lot more issues that are being appealed from like the different boards and commissions. You're getting a lot more community involvement, which requires a lot more legal resources to make sure everyone is covered.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move that we accept the budget for the Office of Law as written.
So recommend approval in the report to the council.
Favorable recommendation.
Favorable recommendation.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All right, I am a little worried that we're not putting enough money in here, but we'll find out, and that's why we have contingency funds.
Can add during the year.
All right, thank you.
you.
Thank you for wading through all of this.
You know,
All right.
Mr. Chair, I think we should use our telephones and not have our staff sitting here for hours on end, hoping that we
I
get
think
to them.
that's
And
right.
that 10 or 15 minutes before we think they're going to come up, we send them a quick text and say, head on over. Because this is like not fair.
Yeah,
Okay, we have 2 left to do, right? HR and IT, and I hope we can finish them both in 20
you're an
minutes.
optimist.
All right, so you're on, Trish. By the way, I think you were the only department that gave us a mission statement, so thank you for that.
You're very welcome. Because we have one.
Yeah. Maybe police did too, but
I think you should also have our performance standards, performance measures as well. And we're trying to blend into our budget exactly funding for that. We're starting this year. I mean, we've already done in-service training, which we created ourselves with the police department, and because I worked with the committee, some members of the police department, to update their harassment policy, and so we combined that with implicit bias training. And so you'll see that we've dedicated funds this year, our training funds, to that effort, and then we will do quarterly trainings to make sure all employees are always provided with implicit bias training. So that's an important initiative that we're including in this next year's budget. So you'll see, first of all, on the staffing summary, that there's some changes there. It's not that we're adding positions, but in our enhancement, we did ask for our summer intern, who's been working with us
Yay,
for 3
thank you.
years. We're
Thank you.
asking for
Thank
her
you.
to become or to have that position be full-time. Obviously, we'll go through the competitive process, but we have had a real need, and we've kind of stayed, just under the bar of 30 hours in order to be compliant with the Affordable Care Act requirements for health insurance. And so we feel it's time, maybe past time, but we do feel it's time this year to ask for that position to be full-time. The other changes have already been provided to you in the position summary with our 1519. And so you'll see that we just took the consultant's recommendations, as Teresa previously said to you. Any changes that were made were consultant recommendations reviewed by HR, and
Right.
then going forward, you should probably see throughout the budget process those. So for our little division, we had the training program administrator was kind of a misnamed position, so that's really our number 2 position in HR. So that was recommended for a grade 16, and we're changing it to human resources administrator. The manager, because the comparators out there are directors, that was recommended for a grade 19. And that, again, that was reviewed. There are no other, well, actually, there was another change which I don't see reflected in the budget book here, which the human resources associate was recommended for, to remove the 1 designation on it, because there's only 1 position. That was to go to an A8. And don't see it
So
reflected in the
that-
budget book.
Wasn't that become a 1 in 20, where the training program was a
So what
1
you see is
19?
FY '19, you see kind of your pluses
Right,
and minuses
right.
in there for your
So-
title changes.
Right. So the number of staff stayed the same. There's some promotions. We have a budget that has a, healthy increase from the 18 level, but not from the 19 level at all.
No.
I mean, so looking at the budget summary table, are there any questions or observations from the committee? Contract services are going up. Can you tell us what's involved there?
Well, one of the items in here is that the Limited English Proficiency Initiative, they're putting that money in HR's budget.
Right.
It's a citywide initiative, but they needed to have a home for it, and so we're home. And
And then on your number 4 for your,
so any other changes that we really have built into here, like some of our contractors, like we have for employee physicals and for testing, and like we solicited from them what they anticipated were going to be increased costs, and so we've built that into our budget.
on your number 4, configure state-of-the-art human resources, is there money in here for that on page 56?
We kind of gave at the store, we gave at the office last year, as you remember. We took a big budget hit, about almost a 14%
Right.
decrease in funds in order to help fund the MIT analyst position. And so it's really us working directly with MIT to carry out those initiatives for us. We have a change in Munis. We've bought into something that's what you call it, a beta test that we're in with that? Early adoption, thank you. So we're in early adoption, which included some significant changes on the applicant tracking side, and we have a number of expectations to implement as part of that. There's
So
some other
is it-
HR-related changes that we'll be working with them on.
Is it working, and do you have the money you need?
Do I
Yes.
have all the money I need?
For just for number 4.
Just say no.
I feel like
Remember, Jody's listening.
No, I mean, we are incredibly frugal and adaptive. We've had to be. And I said it before, I'll say it again. I am grateful for having the position that had been eliminated for 3 years restored, because we had no idea how much it impacted us.
Right.
It was significant.
Okay.
For us to say, oh, yeah, we're going to get around to the rules and regulations review, I really, honestly, I can't look back because I don't know how we survived. There are many initiatives we would love to be involved in, to fund and do so with support, but we're government employees, and that's just what we're attempting to do. One thing am concerned about in the budget is I don't see in here our line item for physicals. We have, and as you know, a lot of what impacts us, I heard Ashley talking about how requests for information, MPIA requests affect them. For us, it's turnover in government that affects
Right.
us. It's public safety hiring. It's time intensive, it's money intensive as well. I know that probably when Chief Stokes comes later with his budget, he has not had entry-level testing consistently as a way to try and meet some of the initiatives around diversity in hiring. When those initiatives are expected of others, it comes to us to try to do with the budget that we have. So I'm not sitting through their budget yet. I don't know what's coming. We try to talk amongst ourselves to anticipate those needs. So I would hope you would keep in mind that if there are efforts down the road that are going to expect that we test more people, that we do more physicals, that we do more psychological evaluations, and that there are expenses associated with onboarding and then retention, that it's going to land on us as well. And so it's just really important that we're mindful of that. We, in order to attract and maintain people at even high levels of government, we do outreach.
I would like to comment that it's in the salary and benefits line, because that object in our system is in the salary and benefits category. The
Okay.
physicals have been budgeted for $60,000.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes,
That's
it's
what I
in
asked
there.
for.
It's just, you may have been used to seeing it in
In a
the other
separate-
line item.
Yeah.
But it's categorized as a salary/benefit that we provide, so we've got it in that line item.
Okay, good, good.
And that's 60,000?
Yes, we asked for 60 because, again, we were trying to build in what we knew were going to be increased costs associated with each of those
It's
individual
about 10
vendors that we use.
It's about 10,000 more than the budget this year.
And again,
it's 10,000 more.
we count these chickens.
Yeah,
you know?
they do.
Right.
They spend it all.
So it's our job to ask why the spending, but it's also our job to ask, is there enough support for the function? So, and this is usually where you weigh in. This is our staff. This is
Yeah.
our 600 people. Are we giving enough money to take care of our people?
Well, we are, it's always important to try to support your staff with skill set development as well, and we have obviously, I've already said, focused on implicit bias training. I feel that is a citywide need and expectation, and we are already set up to try and fulfill that. The other part of it is, we see just in the course of business that we need to make sure our supervisors have good training and skill sets so that they make good coaching and counseling decisions, so that they, that the way they make decisions is compliant with law, is emotionally intelligent, is reasonable and appropriate. And it would be good to build, consistent training resources into that. I feel that maybe Barb will address, sometimes we have technology support and training that's needed. I know that MIT has asked for that in the past. We are trying, when we are going to implement something this year for ahead of open enrollment, that it's called Employee Navigator. And so we'll be doing onboarding online, and that it'll be fillable forms, it'll be ways to utilize technology to be more savvy and more better data gatherers, and reduce the impact of data errors by using multiple systems. And so part of that too, we're hoping that we can have online sources of training attached to it, so when employees go on, it's kind of like an employee access, consistent employee access, so they can expand their knowledge base that way as well. We look all over the place for free opportunities for those kinds of things. So there are a lot of vendors out there willing to help with paid access to webinars and so on. So
I have one statement and a quick question. Just a reminder that your department touches, and you've just touched on this, every department in the city, whether it's benefits or salaries, which is a benefit, but all sorts of other human services that are provided. HR does it all for everybody.
And does a good job.
And does an excellent job of it.
thank you for that. We have a good staff. We have an excellent staff, very dedicated staff.
Absolutely. My only question has to do with police. Are they still doing their own testing? I mean, do you do anything with recruitment and testing?
We assist them with that. Yes, so we're responsible for all their promotional testing, and we work with them on entry level. We attend and help deliver their entry level testing. They for entry level, the police department handles their own testing of orals and does the agility testing. But the written piece of it, we're a real part of it. And under the labor negotiation agreement, under the collective bargaining agreement with police, it's HR that's doing promotion. So that kind of hit me between the eyes personally in 2017, because all of a sudden I'm logistically handling all elements of promotion. And we retained that because that did not change in the bargaining unit agreement.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we give a favorable recommendation to the section of the budget that speaks to HR.
I second. Alderman Payone, any discussion? Hearing
He
none.
said aye.
All
We have
those
to
in
wait for
favor
his
sig-
return.
Oh,
Question. The initiative is English as a second language. How is that incorporated in your budget? Is that?
it's one of the,
Did I miss
More
it?
in.
It is,
Is it called something different?
it's a $15,000 enhancement.
Okay.
It's $5,000 for a language access line subscription,
Sorry, I
and
didn't
then
miss it.
$10,000 for contractual service to help us implement it.
Okay, thanks. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I did not see it as an
That's
enhancement. Okay.
Perfectly fine.
all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Let's try to
All right.
squeeze Barbara in.
Barb.
She's been sitting through the whole day.
Thank you, Ms. Hopkins.
Yes, thank you.
You're very welcome, thank you.
And by the way, we don't give Trish credit. She sits in on the police and fire pension. Very valuable member of that, and probably some others that I'm forgetting, but those are all critical elements. So, MIT. I would tell you that I have no marks on mine. I understand, but we want to offer you the opportunity to give us some opening remarks.
Good afternoon.
Good start.
We have several enhancement requests for next fiscal year. We also have a couple items that were actually requested as enhancements last year and were cut, but they have become part of our operations. So generally, those items, as well as contractual cost increases, are what is reflected by the change in our budget items, budget amounts.
So are you saying those are or are not included in your budget?
They are.
They are.
In the
So you're
management.
good. All right.
So it looks like GIS is what, most of it, the 9,000.
The award-winning GIS.
I was
Yes.
getting ready to say that,
Yes.
you know? We have to support the,
Yeah.
and then the other is for storage, cloud storage.
Correct. That's for disaster recovery. That's something that we absolutely should be doing. It's an off-premise, cloud-based storage solution that should this building and where our off-site storage be leveled, we can still recover from the previous day's backup.
The accounting associate 3,
Yes.
is that the crosswalk to Munis, or what does that person do?
That's actually through the latest class and comp study. That will be converted to a support technician.
Okay.
Is that the position we moved last year?
It was frozen during FY19. It is
Okay.
currently unoccupied, and we are requesting that we fill that position. Our existing staff have adjusted their workload in order to serve our employees. Our GIS technician specifically is dealing at least 50% of his time with non-GIS support calls. Everybody has, and there are other things that are not getting done, and other staff that are working late on their own time to accomplish their tasks.
So I would say, just like was a little concerned about the funding for law, I'm a little concerned about the level of funding for HR in terms of being sufficient, and I'm a little concerned also with IT. And again, you touch us, definitely. You know how many times I call.
And I apologize, we're not always able to take your call.
No, you guys are good. I certainly would entertain a motion to recommend favorably on this, but I do want to offer the reservation that on these three departments, I'm worried that we're not, we're being very tight.
We would be happy to accept higher levels of funding and additional staff.
Well, you need to give us some background on what that would be. You mentioned a couple things that were cut. I think we would like to hear what those were. I know the finance director and the city manager are trying to stay within a tight budget, but I think we have to balance that with things that will make us a better operating city, and so.
I can offer a little bit on this. The position that was frozen was funded for 20, and the department gave us 3 enhancement requests. The 2 of them were the ones you see here, the GIS consulting and the off-site cloud backup, but there was another request, and you have them in your packet, so you can take a look.
Right.
It was related to staffing, but like you said, there's a tight funding resources, so that's one that we did not put in here.
All right, so we can
Take a look at that.
take a look at those, but
So there is an enhancement sheet, and this packet has funded enhancements and not funded enhancements, so that makes it more of a challenge. But there's 118,000 requests for additional MIT analysts.
That is correct.
So that's the one that was not funded.
Yes, we'd like to bring in another analyst that has a very strong financial background to help us take Munis to an entirely different level. Our current analyst has an extremely strong payroll HR background, and we'd like to balance that out with financial experience.
and there are a lot of Munis capabilities that we don't use right now. Right?
That is correct.
And I think the city manager has talked about that from time to time. I think she's been drinking from a fire hose, so she hasn't had a chance to get back to focus. But maybe for the council-wide discussion, we can get into, we haven't had a chance to look at these other enhancements. But again, we want to thank you. I certainly definitely am indebted to the service from the staff, but we want to thank you for the work you're doing, and we have a motion to recommend favorably.
I will make the motion to recommend favorably the MIT budget.
And I will second that motion, and my gosh, we got in under the wire.
All in
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Oh, I forgot, Ellie, did you have any comment?
No,
Yeah.
keep going, you're on time.
All right.
Right.
Thank you very
Take you out
much.
with environmental.
We appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Thank you.
And thank you for, I hope it was somewhat entertaining to watch all our machinations.
like to call it entertaining, educational.
Okay. It's like watching sausage being made.
Thank
All right.
you. All right, Mr. Chair, I think we've gotten through our schedule, our agenda. Yes. So I will move that we adjourn.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned till tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock.
Or 9:30.
You don't want to stay for environmental?
I have to.
Oh, you have to, Ross.
don't.
Oh, my gosh, you're right.
I just moved.